I'm from Louisiana, a state that seized an opportunity to replace plantations that harmed and killed my people during slavery with petrochemical facilities that are doing the same thing today. That as we rebuild, the ground beneath us is literally disappearing. Sea levels are rising. Hurricanes are more intense, more frequent, and more deadly. These natural disasters are not so natural. They're human-made crises fueled by fossil fuels and environmental racism. The petrochemical facilities I mentioned earlier are in an area called Cancer Alley, an 85-mile corridor stretching from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. It is lined with over 150 petrochemical plants. For Black residents living nearby, it's a death sentence. The air is toxic, the water is undrinkable, and cancer rates are some of the highest in the country. They say these facilities provide economic opportunity, but death is the real cost of Cancer Alley.
My name's Nguyen. I'm a born and raised New Orleanian. I grew up in Broadmoor and currently live in Mid-City. I'm really biased. I do love Jazz Fest. It's just this beautiful weekend. I'm not there to see like the top artists or, have a set schedule. I actually just like to go around and just take me wherever the mood strikes, right? Whether it's Native American area where they're doing, tribal dances, or going by, to hear an interview about the latest artist, or popping into one of the festival tents and just kind of seeing who's there and just what they have to offer. I've just seen really cool things, and every time I go to Jazz Fest, it just really reminds me of New Orleans. I remember I learned about Katrina. This is I guess because I was 13, I was in library class. You go to the library, you pick out a book and things like that. And I remember my classmates saying, oh, did you hear the MTV Music Awards got canceled in Miami? And it's like, oh, really? What happened? And they're like, there's a storm coming. It's its name is Katrina, a hurricane's coming. So they're canceling the MTV Music Awards. And so that was where I was like, okay, cool. That's pretty big news. I mean, I was 13, so I was I wanted to see Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears, and it's okay, cool. So I go home and I'm hey mom, hey dad, I heard a hurricane's coming, do we need to worry about it? They're like, oh no, it's fine, it's going to Florida. I don't know what got me to start watching the news, but I did. I just turned on the TV and just started really watching what people had to say, the mayor and your forecasters, and just these high-ranking officials saying things you have to, they started saying things you have to go. It's going to be 20-foot storm surge walls. You have to go. This is a matter of life and death. And I remember, asking my mom. I was hey, I think we should evacuate. The news is saying we got to go. And I remember her saying, no, it's just going to turn. They always turn. Every time we leave, it's going to turn. We're just going to stay here. We got to protect everything because we don't want things to get looted. So I watch the news some more. I stay up all night watching it. And, I see Ray Nagin and, all this different just coverage of just what we're going to expect in the area. And they're saying things it's not a drill. This is a literal emergency. You have to, if you can go, you have to go. So I remember begging and pleading my mom the next morning. And I was please, we have to go, we have to go. And it got to a point where, I was so persistent and annoying. She finally kind of just tossed her hands up and she said, fine, I will send you with your aunt and uncle, and they're gonna evacuate, and I'm gonna stay behind and watch the laundromat, watch the house. But we're wailing, I was just no, we all have to go. And eventually she got really fed up. I think it was the day before the storm, where she finally saw coverage and it said there's a mandatory evacuation, you have to leave. And we packed up the car. We had 2 Pomeranians. One was pregnant, my younger sister and 2 older brothers. There's a little bunch of us. We got on the road, and it took 20 hours to get to Houston. we didn't have a place to stay, but luckily there was a Red Cross shelter. They were taking pets, and so we ended up staying there. And yeah, at the time, I just kind of remembered like the good nature of people. Like there was all this chaos happening, and it was wild because like they had taken the time to think about like board games and books and activities for the kids to do, or like pet food and pet toys and all this different stuff. And so, you know, the storm happened, and then still didn't have a place to go. We watched Canal Street flood on the news, and it was hard. It was hard seeing just everything you knew. We're a city that lives below sea level. We're a coastal city at the mouth of Mississippi, and so you know we have crumbling drainage. You know, it was in pretty bad condition before, but today it's just worsened by you know, extreme heat or the extreme flooding, or you know, hurricane winds and just power outages. And so, you know, like there are pockets of neighborhoods in town where like they still don't have sidewalks. They've never had sidewalks actually, and even after Katrina, they still don't have sidewalks. And to think about like, you know, sidewalks is the first step, but just your basic infrastructure so you can like get around town. You can walk to school or bike to work or drive to work. Just the basics that we need to survive are just still not there. You know, I worked in emergency management for 3 years before moving over to climate and sustainability work at the city. With Katrina, we lost a huge percentage of our trees in Sound, which, you know, if you're like, okay, cool, like you don't have a tree, like it's not a big deal, but it becomes a cascading effect. You know, like we are seeing hotter summers.
I'm Megan Braden Perry, a journalist born and raised in New Orleans in the 7th Ward, to be exact. I remember being a kid and you're like, oh, you know, you learn about these things, you know, about exhaust and this, but you don't think about it. But now you're seeing it in real time. Like I can't remember how much of it's sinking, but they say we're sinking like inches a year. And if we keep sinking, where we gonna go? I remember being in school and, you know, we would do the fire drill. And that was it. We would do a fire drill because the hurricanes never came, because it was like, oh, Betsy was our hurricane and that was it. And that's never going to happen again. So why are we worried? And then the May flood in 95. But, you know, we were all taught, oh, the pumps, you know, if New Orleans, if it rains too much, too long and too hard for too long, well, it's going to flood. So it's just like, well, it's going to flood. I don't know. So nobody ever thought about climate change. But you know, we have tornadoes now. I don't know what to do for no tornado. I don't know what to do. I never had to practice. You know, people, oh, we used to go in the hall with our books. We never did that. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to prepare for a tornado. I know how to prepare for a flood. You move all your stuff upstairs. And I think Katrina showed us that didn't exactly work. But hey.
I'm Fairetha Warren. Some people know me now as Auntie Fate. I grew up as TT. I'm from the 9th Ward, the upper 9, not the lower 9. And I also lived uptown, 7th Ward, pretty much all over New Orleans. They're putting up roads and they're doing the streets, but they're putting a Band-Aid on it. They're not doing a deep job, deep inner structure. They're not. All that piping and stuff down there is rotten. It's no good. It's been here for over a century already. When's the last time they went under this city to change out all of that steel that rusts now, that seeps into the water? That's why I don't drink New Orleans water. I'm barely bathing in it, because it's not good for us.
We've learned some things over these past 20 years, but as we meet at the levees every year, march through New Orleans to Hunter's Field, and fellowship with each other, we affirm that community is infrastructure and joy is our superpower. We confirm that climate justice is racial justice. We don't separate environmental health from mental health. or from economic prosperity. It is in our blood to turn our grief into a global movement.
2005, too many bled, too many didn't survive. Too many misled, too many didn't have a job. Too many